By the spring of 1944, deep inside Berlin, German intelligence officers were no longer studying maps filled with troop concentrations or supply routes. Instead, their attention was fixed on a single name. Folders spread across the table contained photographs, intercepted radio traffic, and reconnaissance summaries, all focused on one American general, George S. Patton. More intelligence resources were devoted to tracking him than to any other Allied commander. Not Eisenhower, the overall architect of Allied strategy. Not Montgomery, the methodical British field marshal. One man commanded their fear and their curiosity. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, the senior German commander in Western Europe, followed Patton's movements obsessively. Any report mentioning Patton was flagged as urgent. Rundstedt had fought experienced enemies throughout his career, but Patton unsettled him in a way others did not. The Germans' first real encounter with Patton came in November 1942 during Operation Torch, the Allied landings in North Africa. Patton led the Western Task Force, putting 35,000 American troops ashore in Morocco. It was the United States' first major ground operation against the Axis. German observers watched closely. They always did. Enemy commanders were studied like chess opponents, patterns, habits, weaknesses. What they saw disturbed them almost immediately. Patton moved too fast. American doctrine emphasized careful planning and overwhelming firepower. Patton ignored that rhythm. Within 3 days, Casablanca was secured and French forces surrendered. His troops advanced at a tempo that defied expectations. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, overseeing German forces in the Mediterranean, demanded deeper analysis. Who was this general? What shaped him? The answers made German commanders uneasy. Patton had spent years studying German military theory. He read their texts in the original language. He walked World War I battlefields in France, tracing German breakthroughs step by step. He understood how they thought sometimes better than they did themselves. Then came February 1943. At Kasserine Pass in Tunisia, German forces struck hard. Inexperienced American units collapsed. Lines disintegrated. Retreat turned into panic. It was the worst defeat U.S. ground forces would suffer in the war. German commanders waited to see what followed. Would the Americans withdraw? Would confidence shatter? Instead, something unexpected happened. In early March, Patton was given command of the U.S. the Second Corps, the very force that had fallen apart at Kasserine. Within weeks, German intelligence noticed a sharp change. Patrols became aggressive. Discipline returned. Units that had been ineffective were suddenly pressing forward. Even Rommel noticed. In his diary, he wrote that American forces had become markedly more dangerous. No new weapons. No mass reinforcements. The change came from leadership. By July 1943, the Allies invaded Sicily. The plan placed Montgomery's British Army in the lead, with Patton's 7th Army protecting the flank. Patton ignored the passive role. He drove west, then north at a blistering pace. His troops covered ground faster than any Allied force to that point in the war. German evacuation plans unraveled as Patton's advance threatened escape routes across the Strait of Messina. Despite starting farther away, Patton reached Messina before Montgomery after fighting continuously across the island. German reports described him with a mix of respect and alarm. One officer wrote that Patton fought like a panzer commander, not an American infantry general. He exploited weaknesses instantly. He took risks others wouldn't. He fought like a German. Then came August 1943 and a scandal. At evacuation hospitals in Sicily, Patton encountered soldiers suffering from combat fatigue. Interpreting it as cowardice, he struck 2 men. In one incident, he threatened a soldier with a pistol. The fallout was immediate. Eisenhower was furious. The press erupted. Calls for Patton's removal echoed through Congress. German intelligence followed the controversy closely. The Allies' most dangerous commander might eliminate himself. But Eisenhower stopped short of dismissal. Patton was reprimanded and sidelined, but not discarded. To the Germans, that decision was telling. You don't preserve a weapon unless you intend to use it again. By early 1944, Patton was in England without a combat command. German intelligence tracked him relentlessly. If Patton wasn't leading the invasion forces they could see, then logic dictated he must be leading the real attack. What they didn't know was that Patton commanded a phantom army. The first U.S. Army group existed only in radio traffic, inflatable tanks, and wooden headquarters. It was the centerpiece of history's most successful military deception. The Germans took the bait. They fortified Pas-le-Calais, the shortest crossing of the Channel. They positioned their best reserves there. They waited for Patton. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces landed in Normandy far to the southwest. Yet German armored reserves remained frozen. Hitler and his staff believed Normandy might be a diversion. The real blow, led by Patton, was still coming. For 6 critical weeks, German divisions sat idle because they couldn't believe Patton wasn't involved. On August 1, 1944, Patton finally entered the fight, taking command of the Third Army. Within days, German fears were confirmed. In 2 weeks, Third Army advanced farther than Allied forces had in the previous 2 months. Patton surged through Brittany, then swung east. German defenses dissolved. Command structures collapsed. Front lines became meaningless. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt sent frantic messages to Berlin. Patton was everywhere. By mid-August, Patton saw an opportunity near the town of Falaise. German armies were retreating through a narrowing corridor. Allied forces closed in from north and south. The trap snapped shut. More than 50,000 Germans were captured. Tens of thousands were killed. Equipment losses crippled what remained of the German army in France. Survivors later compared it unfavorably to Stalingrad. After the war, German generals were asked which Allied commanders they feared. Their answers were consistent. Montgomery was predictable. Bradley was cautious. Patton was neither. They called him aggressive, unpredictable, dangerous. Rundstedt said Patton was the Allied commander they feared most. Others said he alone possessed the instincts of a panzer leader. That reputation was cemented in December 1944. When Germany launched its Ardennes offensive, Allied lines buckled. Bastogne was surrounded. Eisenhower demanded answers. How fast could they counterattack? Most spoke of weeks. Patton said 2 days, and he meant it. Having anticipated the attack, Patton pivoted the Third Army north 250,000 men, thousands of vehicles, through winter conditions in 48 hours. German planners were stunned. Bastogne was relieved on December 26th. After the war, German commanders admitted their mistake. They never expected Patton to move that fast. They never did. From North Africa to the Ardennes, they underestimated him every time and paid for it. Patton frightened German generals because he fought the way they believed war should be fought, with speed, aggression, and relentless pressure. He ignored caution. He shattered expectations. As Rundstedt later summarized, George S. Patton was the supreme master of mobile warfare and the Allied general the Germans feared above all others. From desert sands to frozen forests, he earned that fear one battlefield at a time.